Najila is broken. There is no way around it. Even 4 years after her release, years which saw the release of new commanders like Tulane and Urza, Najila is still a super-powered commander. She can be the only warrior on the battlefield, and with enough mana, she can create an entire field of warriors in a single turn. She has roughly 2,000 cards that go infinite with her, and when she's going off, her card may as well say Krenko the Blade Blossom. So why am I rebuilding Najila if I feel this way? Because today we're ripping out all of the infinite combos and seeing just how far she can go with non-infinite multiple combats on a budget. Welcome to the Uncommon Commander. Welcome again, Commander aficionados and newbies alike. My name is Ryan and I'll be your host. Today's deck is one that I've had stewing up on the back burner for quite a while and finally decided to finish. This is a little deck that I like to call Najeela's Incremental Combats when I'm cuddling it to sleep at night. You'll see why in just a minute, but first let's take a nice close-up look at our commander. Najila the Blade Blossom is a legendary creature human warrior that costs 2 and a red to cast and has a 3/2 body with 2 abilities. The first ability is a token creation ability that reads, whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and attacking. The second ability is a multiple combat ability that also bestows some great keywords. It reads as follows: pay a white, a blue, a black, a red, and a green mana. Untap all attacking creatures. They gain trample, lifelink, and haste until the end of the turn. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Activate this ability only during combat. Today I'm presenting a version of Najila that is all about gaining multiple combats through Najeela's ability, making for a very WUBRG matters feel to the deck. I have stripped out nearly all of the infinite combos since I'm not really a huge fan of them, and because almost everyone else has already built Najila that way, so what's the point in retreading it? So we're going to ramp our way into multiple activations of Najeela's ability and combine those combats with cards that scale up incrementally in power higher and higher as we have more and more combat phases. Cards like Honored Crop Captain. Thus my dubbing this style, Incremental Combats. I really hope you guys enjoy this deck. It's not the most powerful version of Najila available, but it is a version that feels more, fair? It's also pretty budget, coming in at well below $150 on the day the script was written, if you're buying it at TCG Player. And if you are, please consider using my affiliate link, found in the video description. You can also support me at my small Patreon page, also linked in the video description. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to tap that like button. If you're new here, I'd be honored to also have you subscribe. Now, on to the deck tech. If getting all 5 colors of mana is so important to this deck, and it is, then we'd better be sure we can get it consistently. To do this, we've got a lot of color fixing in both our ramp and our lands. Our land ramp spells are as follows: Diligent Farmhand, Dawn Treader Elk, Sakura Tribe Elder, Cultivate, Jungle Wayfinder, and the equipments that synergize with multiple combat phases, Explorer's Scope, and Sword of the Animist. We're also running some non-land ramp in the form of Mana Rocks and Dorks. These are Bright Hearth Banneret, Rada Heir to Keld, Commander's Sphere, Svella Ice Shaper, and Gigantha the Wellspring, who is a WUBRG for Najila all on its own. Also loosely called a ramp spell would be Savage Ventmaw, who gives us 3 red and 3 green mana whenever it attacks. We then have Stonework Packbeast, who is cleverly also a warrior, and Gemstone Array for filtering that mana into colors that we need. Finally, we have a single land tutor that searches up one of our awesome color fixing lands, and that is Expedition Map. And I know it's a little outside of my normal order, but let's talk about lands since they're so important to the deck. I've outfitted our land base with pure color fixing. I did this because I needed to make a budget mana base that contained as many potential activations for Najila as possible. Because of this, we're missing out on colorless utility lands like Ghost Quarter, but I didn't want to get greedy with my land base, so that's the trade-off for doing it this way. Now then, our non-basic lands are Command Tower, Darkwater Catacombs, Shadowblood Ridge, Skycloud Expanse, Sungrass Prairie, Exotic Orchard, Opal Palace, and the WUBRG giving lands, Crystal Quarry, and Cascading Cataracts. Our basic lands are 5 plains, 5 islands, 5 swamps, 5 mountains, and 6 forests. I went slightly higher on green here, since a lot of our ramp is green. I found that between the ramp spells and the color fixing here, I almost never had trouble getting at least a couple of WUBRGs onto the battlefield. Alright, we've enabled the heck out of our mana base, so we can get Najila up and running. Now you may be asking, what good do all these extra combats do us? In this section, I'll show you your buffs, which get stronger with each additional combat. These are Honored Crop Captain, Irration Foremost, Shared Animosity, Fervent Charge, Anthem of Rakdos, and Stonebrow, Krosan Hero. As you can see, each one of these cards buff until the end of the turn, not until the end of combat. That means that each time we attack with a creature, Fervent Charge will add another +2/+2 on top of any +2/+2s it's already given that creature this turn. With that card on the field, in the second combat, Najila will be a 7/6. In the third combat, she'll basically have turned into an Eldrazi. And let's not even get into the damage that Shared Animosity can do here. The one card that doesn't quite fit as cleanly in this section as the rest is Irration Foremost. But trust me, an additional double striker each combat is a heck of a buff to our damage. It also has some hidden benefits with some of our draw spells. The more swiftly that we can get Najila going, the better the chance we'll have of her doing her thing. Because of this, we're running several haste enablers. These are Rush Blade Commander, Swift Boots, Ogre Battle Driver, and Samut, Voice of Dissent. Samut additionally can untap Gigantha to give you another combat, as long as you can afford the 1 white mana. Of course, if Najila isn't hasted, we'll want her protected. Besides our Swiftfoot Boots, our protection cards are the easily recurable Selfless Spirit, as well as Dominaria's Judgment and Etchings of the Chosen. Dominaria's Judgment will give us protection from all 5 colors most of the time, which makes it not just great at protection, but also at making our creatures unblockable until the end of the turn, which will likely include several combat steps. We also have a few cards that make our creatures hard to block, which can be useful since we're making a lot of low toughness creatures. These are Bloodchin Rager, Champion of Lamholt, and Surrak Dragonclaw. Surrak goes one further and also makes half our deck uncounterable. Eat it, Barl, Chief of Compliance. Now we're moving into card advantage, and those of you who have been around a long time, you know that I love my engines. Card advantage in this deck will consist of 2 things, cards we can get from our library and cards we can get from our graveyard. The cards that draw us things from our library are Duskwatch Recruiter, Military Intelligence, Mindblade Render, Open into Wonder, which pulls double duty by acting as a way to get our army through, Tome of Legends, Azra Oddsmaker, Keep Watch, and Raider's Spoils. We also have 2 equipments and an enchantment that draw whenever we deal combat damage to an opponent with the creature they're equipped or enchanted to. Those are Mask of Memory, Mask of Riddles, and Sleeper's Robe. Remember Irration Foremost giving us double strike? Well, if you double your strike with these equipped, you'll be doubling your draw as well. Our cards that reanimate or recur our creatures are Den Protector, Alesha who smiles at death, Devoted Cropmate, Garna the Bloodflame, and Champion of Stray Souls, one of the few cards in this deck that lends to an almost aristocrat's feel. And if you've attacked a couple of times with Najila on the board, there's a good chance that the champion could reanimate your entire graveyard. I like this card. I really like this card. Alright, if you haven't had your fill of warriors, worry not, because we're on to our removal section and it's packed with them. So let's start with our warriors that are also removal spells. We have Elvish Skysweeper, which specifically removes flying creatures, covering up a weak point for this deck. Mardu Woe-Reaper for the Graveyard Hate. Goblin Cratermaker, who will kill artifacts and Eldrazi for cheap. Hidden Dragonslayer, which is a card our opponents will begin to fear when it's cast face down. Viridian Zealot, and Banewhip Punisher. Our removal instants and sorceries are Return to Nature and Pier's Whim. Pier's Whim, by the way, doubles as a way to search up one of our non-basic lands. If we're trying to make a friend at the table, it can also be played politically. Just a really sweet card that I don't remember to use very often. Our board wipes, or sweepers, or whatever you call them in your playgroup, are Citywide Bust and Retribution of the Meek. If you cast these before your combats, they will avoid almost all of your creatures, giving you a mostly clear board to swing into with an Alpha Strike. Or 2, or 3. I would also like to mention Bloodshin Fanatic here. This Orc Warrior isn't really a removal spell in the classic sense, but it is here to be player removal. If you remove a player from the game, you remove all their cards from the game too, so, removal. Alright, you aggro fiends, we've made it through 95 cards in this deck, and now it's time to move on to the final 5 cards, in a segment that I like to call
The Final Countdown!
Today's Final Countdown is going to be a countdown of the 5 best enablers in this deck. That is, cards that enable our deck to absolutely go off. I showed you Bloodshin Fanatic just a moment ago for a player removal. Well, at number 5 we have a card that acts in a similar sort of way as player removal, but it does so much more. Number 5 is Brutal Horde Chief. This Orc Warrior has, whenever a creature you control attacks, defending player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, so it drains your opponents out for each attacking creature that you control. But it also has another awesome ability. You'll probably have to sacrifice an entire combat in order to use it, but the other ability does say, pay 3 generic and 2 Boros hybrid mana, which means you can pay either a red or a white, and creatures your opponents control block this turn if able, and you choose how they block. Got problem blockers? Not for long. The biggest thing holding our damage back, besides blockers, is crackback. For those of you who don't know what that term is, it is not when a plumber is bent over but doesn't have his shirt down all the way. What it is when you tap all of your creatures to attack, leaving no blockers, allowing somebody else to, in turn, swing all their creatures into your face. This deck needs to be attacking, so crackback is a concern. Luckily, our number 4 card eliminates that concern almost entirely. Her name is Miri, Weatherlight Duelist. When she attacks, your opponents can only block with 1 creature, so she's a nice evasion card for your warriors. And when she's tapped, no more than 1 creature can attack you each combat. Offense becomes defense, and it's a beautiful thing. At number 3 we have a card that does... well, it does everything. Everything we care about anyway. Its name is Morog, Fury of Akum, and it is a 6/6 creature, which also happens to be a warrior. And it also happens to pump all of our creatures by +1/+0 whenever it attacks an opponent. Oh, and it also happens to give us extra combats as a landfall trigger, in a deck where we're land ramping. A lot. And by doing all of these things, it just happens to be one of the most explosive cards in our deck. And what makes Akum go off bigger than anything else in the deck? Well, not this next card, but it's number 2 on the list of things that do that. This card is the ramp spell, Harvest Season. It may not look like much, as its floor tends to be a pay 3 mana to ramp 1 or 2 lands, but it can also be so much more than that. In playtesting, I managed to get the insane opening hand that gave me a turn 1 Mardu Woe Reaper, a turn 2 Rushblade Commander, and a turn 3 Najila. On turn 3, I attacked with all 3 of them, creating 3 more warriors, giving me a total of 6. On turn 4, I attacked with all 6 warriors, creating 6 more for a total of 12. I then cast Harvest Season and had 16 lands by the end of turn 4. If nobody can blow up your board at that point, and you have anything like Fervent Charge in your hand, you're going to kill somebody the next turn. Maybe a couple of someones. Now just imagine having Morog on the table while you ramp that way. And now, what is the card that is the best enabler in the entire deck? Well, that's our number 1 card, the legendary Elf Warrior, Grand Warlord Rana. Okay, this Hasty Elf has whenever 1 or more creatures you control attack, add that much mana in any combinations of red and or green to your mana pool. Until the end of the turn, you do not lose that mana as steps and phases end. This is pretty sensational if you've got a handful of warriors in play, but it is at its absolute best when you've got Stonework Pack Beast or Gemstone Array in play, as you can filter your mana at a 2-for-1 rate. Once you've got 4 warriors in play, those will double to 8, and when you attack, you'll have enough mana to make a WUBRG. Simply pay that into Najila, and just keep going forever. Yeah, okay, so this is an infinite combo, but I promise it's the only one I've kept around. Besides, it requires quite a bit of setup, not like that Druid's Repository BS. Also, people should be running removal, and it's your job to check them on that sometimes. If they get salty, tell them to play white spells. Alright, you wonderful viewers, I appreciate you watching this video today, and I hope you enjoyed it enough to hit the like button. If not, leave a comment below telling me just everything that I did wrong. Also, we've got a couple Modern Horizons 2 commanders coming up in the next couple of videos. If you're opening packs of that, or just looking to buy one of those commanders outright, be sure to tune in. I'll see you next time.